Hey guys, Stay Patient here and welcome to a brand new series of top 10s. Now we talk a lot on this channel about the really quick easy platinums and they're great for leveling up, but gaming and trophy hunting is all about having fun, isn't it? So I figured it's about time I put together a series that focuses purely on those games that do have easy or fairly straightforward platinums, but are enjoyable to play at the same time. Now we're not just going to be listing all the highest rated games that also have a low difficulty rating on the trophy guides and things like that. We're going to be focusing on games that you might have missed or skipped for whatever reason. Some of them are going to be games you may not be that familiar with. Other ones are going to be big AAA titles that everyone knows about, but you might have skipped them based on maybe assuming the trophies were going to be harder than they are, or just not realizing how good the game actually is. So each game that appears in these particular top 10s will have a reason for being there, which I'll explain as we go along. So I hope I can introduce you to some fun new experiences, or even just some games that you might not have bothered with up until now. So let's dive in guys to episode 1 and take a look at some of the enjoyable easy platinum trophies on PS4. Riptide GP2 isn't going to win any Game of the Year awards, but it has earned a sort of cult classic status among trophy hunters. You see, it's one of those games that some people, including myself, played because they heard the trophies were easy and relatively quick, and it was fairly cheap to buy. It ended up surprising all of us though by actually being quite enjoyable, and its solid reputation even led to a sequel. Of course, people's love for it was partly based on their lack of any expectations going in, so maybe its inclusion on this list could ironically have the opposite effect. But even if you don't enjoy it as much as the rest of us, you'll be done in around 6 hours or so, and it's definitely more polished and a lot more fun than the large majority of so-called quick, easy platinums. It's a real shame that Icy is only currently available on the Hong Kong store because its writing is a stroke of genius. If you played it normally, just following the instructions as you would with any other game, you'd experience some solid and fun 2D hack and slash action. But the moment you start disobeying the directions you're given, things begin to get very interesting and the trophies start pouring in. It's rather ironic how a game that mocks you for chasing its trophies becomes so much better through doing so. The well-voiced narration, which unfortunately most of us will need to read due to the Chinese audio, is very funny, extremely clever, and actually rather thought-provoking. Out of all the platinums you can finish in under 3 hours, which is now quite a few, this one has to be my favourite. I want to give Driveclub a shout out because its disastrous launch led to many gamers avoiding it. Since then, however, it's not only had its issues fixed, but it's turned into a very good racing game, thanks to all its tweaks and updates, not to mention so much DLC that it's now the most rewarding trophy list ever. The entire package is often on sale, but even at its normal asking price it's a real bargain thanks to the massive amount of content and huge number of trophies. Playing that DLC also helps you progress toward the longer-winded leveling-based trophies required for the Platinum. Some of the new events that were added can be really rather difficult, but the Platinum itself is nice and straightforward as long as you have some kind of racing game experience. And if you enjoy the genre, I urge you to give this one a chance if you haven't already, or even a second chance if you tried it at launch and moved on. If you don't like repeating different variations of the same content with different characters, then I may not be able to entice you into playing Alien Nation, as it is kind of a top-down twin-stick version of Destiny. I personally found the leveling and looting mechanics quite compelling though, and as you would expect from the masses of gameplay at Housemarque, it is a lot of fun whether playing with friends, random people online, or just on your own. It is a long one, taking at least around 50 hours, and the RNG related trophies could increase that time considerably depending on your luck. It's a perfect game to have on the go over a period of time though, ducking in and out whenever you feel like some fast moving class-based action. And although it's an easy platinum if you make use of cloud saves while leveling your hardcore character, you can provide yourself with more of a challenge if you wish by adjusting the difficulty and in turn the XP that you earn for each mission. The tower defense genre used to be everywhere, so much so that at some point it seems as though it became oversaturated and went through a period of only really appearing regularly in the form of gimmicky mobile games. Well, Defense Grid 2 takes the genre back to its roots with a very solid and enjoyable installment of the well-regarded franchise. There are 20 levels, but each one can be played in a multitude of different ways. It's a lot of fun perfecting a strategy for a level and then adjusting your approach to fit in with the restrictions imposed by each of the different modes. You don't need to beat all of them though, so you can tailor your personal road to platinum around which levels and modes you find easiest and enjoy the most. The plat can be finished in 20 hours, but as with Alien Nation, there is some RNG involved, so you could be forced to continue playing after all other trophies are earned. Infamous Second Son was the first truly hyped next-gen release on PS4, and as a result many were disappointed when it wasn't hailed as the best game ever. But that's a real shame because despite being a bit on the short side, it is still an incredibly fun experience. And now that you can pick it up for so cheap, its shorter length doesn't really matter. In fact, it plays right into our wheelhouse as trophy hunters. It looks amazing too and manages to retain that visual quality throughout the graphically demanding high-speed action. The standalone DLC First Light, which is on screen right now, highlights the series' strengths by focusing on the gameplay through the addition of combat arenas. Although story-wise, it's also nice learning more about the most interesting NPC from Second Son. Pretty much anyone will easily be able to knock out both platinums within a combined 25 hours, and I'm sure you'll have an absolute blast doing so. Telltale are widely known as the masters of story-driven adventure games, but they may have met their match at last with Life is Strange. The developers at Don't Nod have crafted a choice-based narrative here that can finally provide Telltale with some competition, and hopefully push them to up their game and take a step into this new generation. But forget Telltale, I'm most interested in what Don't Nod come up with next. Presenting their sci-fi story using everyday characters and doing so within a believable real-world setting makes it all feel more relatable. You find yourself genuinely caring about what happens to each character. And you have much more control over what does happen, with all your actions having truly impactful consequences. Lots of people have told me they enjoyed this dead easy 10 to 15 hour platinum more than they ever expected to, so I'm sure you will too if you haven't already. Among the plethora of city-based open-world games released last generation, Sleeping Dogs was a refreshing surprise. It may be showing its age now, and the remaster hasn't exactly brought it up to modern day standards, but is still definitely worth your time. It takes all the usual sandbox ingredients of driving, shooting, karaoke, but it also throws in a much deeper hand-to-hand combat system than you'd expect to find in a game of this type. And although the graphics themselves were never considered especially impressive, other developers could learn a lot from its excellent voice acting and storytelling. Plus, it's just nice exploring Hong Kong rather than the typical Western-style locations we see so often. It does take slightly longer to platinum on PS4 than it did on PS3, but it's still only around 30 hours or so, and you can find it for so cheap during sales on the store that you really have no excuse not to give this one a go. I'm cheating a bit here by including an as yet unreleased double remaster, but I want you all to know about it ahead of time so you can jump on these intensely gripping games straight away if they're your type of thing. They're so heavily narrative based that I've decided to avoid any footage whatsoever, and I'll refrain from giving out any story details. Suffice to say, they're Japanese visual novels that originally released on PSP and Vita, and both had me hooked from start to finish. If you're reading all the dialogue and really taking in the story, they'll take a while to get through, especially when you factor in the kind of tacked on extra mode in each game. And despite there being nothing difficult, there are several things you need to bear in mind while playing through, and they'll take you around 40 hours each, so these aren't your typical easy Japanese visual novels. Trust me though, do yourself a favour, beg, borrow, steal, whatever, just make sure you play them. So I'd say probably about 90% of you watching this will have played Borderlands 2 to death and loved it just as much as me. I simply had to include it though because it's just so much fun. It's hilarious, its leveling and looting still outshines more recent games like Destiny and The Division, and when you factor in all the expansions that are included, there is a ton of awesome content, including possibly my favourite DLC of all time, Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon's Keep. There are, however, two main reasons I felt it was worth including. Reasons why some of you might have skipped it, although let's face it, you've all played it, so this is just me thinking of excuses to slip it in. But anyway, let's go with it. If you've taken to gaming more so since the launch of the PS4, you may assume it's too late to bother with this one, that it's just a remaster, or that its online won't be very active. Well, ignore those thoughts, because Borderlands 2 feels like it was built from the ground up for PS4. In fact, along with The Last of Us, it's among the best games on the console despite being a remaster. And although it's just as much fun playing solo, it still boasts a thriving online community, and that shows no signs of changing. The second reason for it being on this list is that the trophies are easier than you may have been led to believe. You can, if you like, simply over-level during the New Game Plus style playthroughs, then return to the first playthrough and stamp all over the lower level versions of the raid bosses, negating any real challenge. Now, there is a lot to think about, so it's a relatively complex and kind of long-winded platinum, and there are, you guessed it, some RNG related trophies once again. But trust me, there is nothing here that'll get in your way of 100%ing this game. So if you're that one gamer that hasn't played Borderlands 2, just stop this video and go out and do so now. So there we have it guys. Now in the interest of keeping these lists nice and varied, I've kept some games back ready for episode 2, and that helps make sure that we can have a nice range of different genres and different time requirements in each top 10, as well as some games that you might not be that familiar with, and some really popular famous games like Borderlands 2 that I just had to speak about because I love them so much. Even if one person watching this has never tried Borderlands 2 and plays it off the back of this video and really loves it, then that makes it worthwhile having included it in the first place. Now you may have noticed that most, if not all of the footage in this video was from you guys, from you subscribers. I put out a call recently saying I was willing to share some of your footage on my channel. So to thank you for your support and your assistance in making this video, I have linked all of your channels in my description below. So go and show them some love guys, to thank them for the work they put in. And if you'd like to have a say in what subject I cover in the next top 10 or even what game I do a guide for next, go and check out my Patreon page, which is again linked in the description below, because I have added some rewards and one of them gives you the power to be able to vote on what content I put up on the channel. So guys, the power is in your hands and I look forward to finding out what top 10 I'll be covering next based on your suggestions and of course what you end up voting on. But for now, of course, I want to say a big thank you for watching. Don't forget to drop a like, leave a comment, let us know which games you enjoyed earning platinums on, and I really look forward to catching you in the next video. Thanks guys, see you then.